Hello everyone, I'm Brazen Eagle and thank you for joining me here. So today we have information regarding a political walkout in the state of Oregon. So, Oregon GOP chair defends state walkout, Democrats using emergency clause to push cap and trade bill, which this article was published on June 21st, 2019. Bill Courier, chair of the Oregon Republican Party, told Breitbart News the Beaver State's Republican state senators used a walkout as a last resort against their Democrat counterparts' attachment of an emergency clause to prevent a public referendum on House Bill 2020. The bill is a cap-and-trade measure taxing the production of carbon dioxide emissions. He joined Thursday's edition of SiriusXM's Breitbart's News Tonight for an interview with hosts Rebecca Mansour and Joel Pollack, in which he defended Oregon State Senate Republicans' walkout. On Thursday, Oregon's Democrat Governor Kate Brown authorized state police to find the state's missing Republican lawmakers after they failed to show up for a vote on the aforementioned bill. If passed, the bill would tax carbon dioxide emissions. The bill's text mandates implementation of a carbon pricing program to combat climate change, which it attributes to carbon dioxide emissions. Oregon's Democrats are trying to bring the Republicans back to have that quorum so that they can basically control the outcome of something that has widespread dissent and opposition across the state, said Courier. House Bill 2020 would basically ensure the devastation of Oregon's economy, added Courier, which has already been attacked repeatedly with these bills to tax and regulate Oregon businesses into oblivion. Courier explained Oregon's current Senate composition. We have 30 members in the Senate, he said. 12 are Republican, and we have one vacant seat at the moment, which means they have 11 Republican senators within the state of Oregon. Like it says, 11 state Republicans did walk out after about 10 hours of negotiation, and basically what they were asking for was for the Democrats to stop using what they call the emergency clause in all of their bills. Just about every bill that's been put forward has had an emergency clause attached to it, which is supposed to be used, imagine this, in an emergency, added Courier. What the effect of that is, it denies the people having a vote on it because it prevents a referral to the voters. By putting that emergency clause on there, they're essentially preventing the voters from voting on issues that they don't want the voters to overturn. Courier continued, we've had such massive statewide protests and pushback against cap and trade here in Oregon at town halls that the Democrats tried to sell out in the rural areas. Rural areas, he stated, are the most negatively affected by this cap and trade because it puts the burden on them, in terms of fuel costs that aren't borne by the urban areas, supposedly to achieve some sort of environmental benefit. It's really a Ponzi scheme, government-sponsored, that installs an energy czar, if you will, in Oregon, who has almost unregulated authority to regulate businesses, determined Courier. Ultimately, that's just going to benefit a few people, some of the cronies, and it's not going to help Oregonians. It's going to raise the average cost of living for the average Oregonian by over $1,000 a year, not to mention the effects on folks that use a lot of fuel like truckers and loggers, and others here in Oregon who already have been hanging on by a thread because of these taxes and regulations. The negotiation centered on one request, I guess you could call it a demand if you wanted to, because it was a negotiated point, and that was to stop using fake emergencies, said Courier. What it boils down to is, who's representing Oregonians best? Those who are passing the laws that hurt them, or those that are standing up against something they oppose? Which is this cap and trade bill. This is the tool that's available to the minority, and has been used in other states. It's been used by Democrats in Oregon. In fact, our own Governor Kate Brown used it in 2001. She advocated for it on behalf of Democrats. What Oregon State Senate Republicans are doing is not unlawful, and it's the only tool they have to protect the voters and protect the constitutional rights of the voters, estimated Courier, noting how attachment of emergency clauses to bills prevents them from being put to voters via referendum. People can have a voice via referendum if emergency clauses are removed from proposed legislation, he said, adding Democrats refuse to do that. They refuse to let it go before the people. Who's really standing up for Oregonians, asked Courier. The Democrats who are pushing legislation that significantly hurt most Oregonians or Republicans who are standing up and saying, look, this is a tool available to us to stop this from going through. Republicans are standing up for the will and the voice of the voter. Courier recalled how Oregon's Democrats use the emergency clause in June to pass legislation affording access to driver's license for illegal aliens, which is a video I did about New York doing the exact same thing yesterday or 2 days ago. Pollock asked, why not take this to the voters and say, look, what Democrats are doing, this cap and trade bill is terrible. The other policies they're enacting are damaging and contrary to the commitments they made to the people. You need to vote these people out. It's the only language these people understand. You have to vote the Republicans in so we can undo this damage, cap, and trade system. Why is that not an option? Why not go to the voters next year and say it's time to fix this mistake? Courier replied, Republican senators are putting everything on the line. This is a significant personal risk for them, not just political risk. In their own districts, their constituents are going to say, why did you walk out? This is a huge risk on their part in order to stand up for the voters and say, enough is enough. If you want to think of it as peaceful resistance, you can. Nothing they're doing is unlawful. It's the only tool they have left. Pollock remarked, that's the way we do it. We have an opposition that expresses the view of those who are on the losing side this time, but you can continue. We're not going to like everything the majority wants to do, but we can't kick the chessboard over and quit the game. You're rejecting the rules of the game. I understand there's a place for civil disobedience, but this is a bad law. It is not an illegitimate law, and if you think it's illegitimate, why not take it to court? Can you appeal to the judiciary? Pollock went on, I don't understand the gesture of leaving the legislature. What I'm arguing is the rules of representative democracy. We have to go along sometimes and participate in a debate we're going to lose. If we expect that from the other side, then when we're governing, why don't we return that? I sometimes understand that turnabout is fair play, but in this case, this seems pretty fundamental to me. And then I guess Pollock continued, don't Oregon voters have the right to have a legislature that meets when it's physically capable of meeting, and not to have the proceedings of that legislator disrupted because one party seeks to use that disruption as a political lever? I think that, at some point, you accept the rules of the game, and it's about the rights of the voters to elect and be served by the government they choose. The integrity of the system is something that's really important. We don't give up on democracy because we lose. Well, we're not a democracy. Courier responded, the voters can choose to vote the Republicans out or not. The consequences are the same for both sides. Oregon's state Senate Republicans taking that risk right now, and I'm betting everything that I'm worth that the voters are going to support Republicans and we're going to gain back seats because they stood up for the people who are not allowed to vote on these things because of these emergency clauses. The goal was, and I think it still is, to bring Oregon's Democrat state senators back to the table, concluded Courier. So, regardless of political party or whatever you want, this is pretty crazy. Kind of crazy that you'd enact a tax on your people. Look, basically the Republicans walked out of the session because in order to pass this carbon tax bill, the cap and trade bill, you must have a quorum of 20 lawmakers present in order for it to actually pass. In this case, there are only, at the current moment, 18 Democrats within the session, but there are a total of 11 Republicans that are also part of the Senate. To pass it, I think you just need a majority, but you have to have at least 20 people there that are part of the Senate in order to make sure that it actually passes. The Democrats need 2 Republicans present to pass this tax. And this is where the gridlock is. Look, Democrats and leftists claim that this is a cap and trade bill. For the rest of us, this is merely a carbon tax, much like the one that started the Yellow Vest movement in France beginning late last year. The Democrats claim that this is to fight climate change and punish people if they emit too much carbon dioxide. But then how much carbon dioxide is too much? Is breathing going to be taxed? How much fuel can people use? Or how much fuel can companies use, huh? This will absolutely hurt people. Now, if you can probably tell, I'm pretty much a skeptic when it comes to man-made climate change. If you have absolute definitive proof that mankind as a whole, or Americans as a whole, are causing the climate of the earth to radically change and shift, please provide me with evidence. If you can definitively prove that to me, because scientists have been flip-flopping on so-called man-made climate change since before I was born. But, I don't want the environment hurt, and we should be responsible for the environment in moderation. But by punishing people who earn their living with a tax that'll hurt all of Oregonians, you're going to severely hurt or kill the economy of the state. It was also interesting to hear that this carbon tax basically would hurt the rural areas of the state of Oregon and not the urban centers. Basically, you're forcing the rural people to pay for what the urban population wants, that the urban population won't be affected by. And this, like any tax, it'll absolutely raise the cost of living in the state of Oregon. You know, from courier, can you afford to pay another $1,000 in taxes a year? That doesn't seem very fair. This will absolutely kill the livelihood, or at least severely hurt the livelihood of truckers, loggers, and other jobs in the state. And you know what? Where will this money go? If this tax is passed, which it probably will in the end, where will that money go? Will it help pay off the Oregon state debt, which is, the last time I checked, about $31 billion, I think, off the top of my head? Is it going to help pay off the state debt? Is it, maybe will that money expand the government more? Will that just make the government more powerful? Will this tax benefit the people in some way? I really doubt that any tax collected on the rural folk, or, if this tax actually passes, I doubt it will actually, be used for things like infrastructure, or be used for, like, better education systems within the state of Oregon. I doubt it'll actually be used for stuff like that. That's actually a benefit for the people. Now, at the time of this video, I've got a little link here by Wikipedia which shows you who, within 2017, produced the most carbon dioxide emissions. Now, you might be thinking, hey, you know what? The United States, we're not number one. No. The United States is only second in terms of producing the most carbon dioxide emissions. If the Democrats, or if you really cared about who produces the most emissions, at least in terms of CO2 emissions, then you would probably do whatever it took to stop the country producing the most emissions. And I'm sure, as you can tell from this chart, who's the number one producer of all CO2 emissions? That country right there. Good old China, as some would call China. So it's China that produces, by large, the absolute most CO2 emissions from Rentar, fuel catalyst, the world's biggest CO2 polluters, and according to what measure? No country on Earth produces more carbon dioxide than China, and it ain't even close. In fact, the next closest culprit, the US, produces half as much carbon dioxide as China. China produces 9,000 million metric tons of carbon dioxide annually. The US produces 5,000 million metric tons of CO2 annually, according to the Union of Concerned Citizens. The world's largest producer of CO2, India, generates 2,000 million metric tons annually, but India only has a geographic area of 2 million square miles. China and the US both have an area of roughly 6 million square miles. Though the US is 3 times as large as India, it only produces 2.5 times the amount of carbon dioxide. As such, it is fair to assume the US is far more environmentally conscious than both China and India, and it is equally fair to assume that given China's and India's astronomical population explosion over the last 5 decades, as the two countries' population majority industrializes, emissions levels will continue to rise regardless of what the world manages to accomplish. No matter what we do, if you really care about the amount of CO2 being emitted into the atmosphere, you got to retain China and India. No doubt about it. Now, I'm not saying that we can't reduce, or at least cut some of our carbon dioxide emissions, but what I am saying is that you should not punish people with taxes and increase costs of living for programs that hurt your average citizen. What benefit will your average citizen see from this? When this tax is passed and they have to pay more, guess what? They're not going to see a benefit. Why would you punish people that way? Why? If anything, offer some sort of alternative to help reduce emissions that could be a direct benefit for citizens, or give them an option instead of paying more. How about you have citizens or companies or something else, like plant more trees or something, or clean up the environment or something like that? You know? If, of course, fighting increased carbon emissions is so important to you. But you gotta understand, Oregon, when you think of Oregon, it's part of the West Coast. It's part of the left coast. And the governor of Oregon, oh my God, is a terrible, piece of garbage. This is Kate Brown. Yuck. This is Kate Brown, the governor of Oregon, who is apparently the first openly LGBTQ LMNOP person elected to the governor of the United States. But she loves sanctuary cities and even declared that Oregon was a sanctuary state. She literally protects illegal aliens from ICE. She claims that, of course, like I said, Oregon is a sanctuary state, and right now, she has literally sent police to round up the Republicans who left the state Senate and force the Republicans to watch their state die. She would rather have the police round up her political opponents instead of deporting illegal aliens that literally rape and murder Americans. We are truly living in a clown world. Also, the news wanted to report on some sort of militia organizing that was going to the Oregon State House to protest, stuff like that, but, I've, at this point of this recording, have heard no action taking place yet, so I think the news just want to report on murmurs, on rumors, on stuff like that. But regardless, there are organizations within Oregon that actually care about Oregon and its people and can show that there are consequences if you push people too far. So, if you actually want to help support the people that left or don't want to see the state die economically, you can go to the GoFundMe page, which I've linked in as the first link in the description below. If you want to support these people, I'm surprised they've actually already raised $37,000 of almost a $50,000 goal within 2 days. That's pretty cool. But anyways, I just wanted to share this article with you, or the series of articles in this news, because I really haven't seen that or seen this on a lot of news outlets, or it's not being publicized. Anyways, regardless, with that in mind, thank you very much for watching. I'm Brazen Eagle, and I hope you have a great day.